Hi everyone, and welcome to the opening discussion of TheGrill 2021, the state of the industry and beyond. We thought it would be useful to frame the next two packed days of conversation with two people who are deeply engaged in the profound changes happening in entertainment and media: Casey Wasserman, the chairman and CEO of Wasserman, and Kevin Merida, the executive editor of the LA Times. I'm excited to be sitting here live and in real life with Casey and Kevin in Los Angeles. Casey is the founder and CEO of Wasserman, a leading sports marketing and talent management company based here in Los Angeles, representing players across all corners of sports, from basketball to soccer to golf and beyond. In April of this year, he added Wasserman Music to the agency in acquiring the assets of Paradigm's live music business. Last year, Casey launched CrowdAmp, a pandemic-friendly product connecting fans virtually with live sporting events. He is also the chairman of LA 28, the nonprofit responsible for the successful bid to bring the Olympic and Paralympic Games to Los Angeles in 2028. Kevin took the reins of the Los Angeles Times as executive editor in June, stepping up to one of the biggest challenges in news west of the Mississippi. The paper is the largest newsroom in the West and the most decorated one. But in the past 2 decades, it has had a series of owners, a series of newsroom leaders, and a series of deep institutional challenges, both economic and cultural. Kevin came to the LA Times from running The Undefeated at ESPN, devoted to covering diversity and cultural issues through sports. And before that, he was a top Washington Post editor and writer, where I was fortunate enough to cross paths with him. He also found time to write the book Supreme Discomfort: The Divided Soul of Clarence Thomas. In taking this new position at the LA Times, he packed up his life in Washington, D.C. during a global pandemic, no less, to transform a 139-year-old newspaper into a digital powerhouse for years to come. Welcome, Kevin and Casey. So my first question is, how is entertainment and media doing? Live entertainment is shaky. Theatrical movie business is shaky. Last year, we lost 90,000 jobs in entertainment and media to the pandemic. Some of them have come back, not all. But that was about $74 billion to the economy of this state. So I'd love to hear from each of you, whoever can go first. How are you feeling about entertainment and media right now?
I guess the story is still being told in different regards. If I start with the sports industry, sports has had a unique ability to be able to play their events in a fanless environment. Most of sports is consumed on television, and so they were able to produce their product, not obviously in full capacity venues or any capacity venues last year, but enough to keep the machine moving, if you will, so to keep the industry of sports going, because the TV revenue, people watched, they could have their games, and they would really survive a season and a half.
Because TV revenue is greater than ticket revenue.
Because it's the only it's the only piece of the media business where there's such a preponderance of media revenue as well as ticket revenue. It's not solely dependent, and so if you compare it to a live business like music, a concert with no people in it is not a concert, and there's no money from broadcast. And if you compare it to things that require production, given the restrictions that were in place, you couldn't produce a lot of stuff that was just for television, so there was not a lot of stuff for television. And sports kind of sits in this interesting middle, which is obviously everything is better with fans, as we've seen this year. But it could present its product well enough to keep it on TV, to keep people engaged. And I think that's what you saw last year. The music business obviously was decimated. It's coming back. I think you're now starting to see what I think will be somewhat of a new normal for a period of time, which is vaccine mandates and testing protocols for all live events. Obviously, certain states have done that. I think it's going to be much more prevalent.
And I presume you're a fan of that idea.
Look, I'm a fan of anything that gets fans back in stadiums and venues, and artists in the music space, and artists performing and earning their living doing their craft. So if that's what it takes, I'm all for it. And then, obviously the entertainment business has been totally changed. Habits, windows, consumption, interest, all those things have changed. And it'll be interesting to see which of those changes are permanent and which of those changes are temporary, or, as always, does the pendulum usually swing too far either way and end up usually in the middle. And I think
We talked about this last year at TheGrill because a lot of those changes had already manifested themselves, and a lot of those changes were waiting in the wings.
I definitely think for things like distribution windows, whatever it used to be is over. Whatever the new normal is, not sure, but it's going to be radically different than what it was. I agree.
Kevin, what's your overall thought on this?
I mean, I guess my overall thought is that, the pandemic's altered all of our lives, right? And I think that's really the macro picture of it, And I don't care what industry you're in. Entertainment's no different. They've had to strategize and figure out how to get their products to the consumers who want them. And even during this period, some really great things are on streaming. There's some fantastic shows that happen. I was at the Walt Disney Company when they did put Hamilton on, the first time, a big Broadway musicals on streaming. Is very successful, different look. A lot of things that happen. And so I think just being resourceful and nimble, which the culture calls for, we're still, I look at it like we're still in whatever leg of the digital revolution we're in, and this is just another roadblock boulder thrown into it to figure out. My son's an actor, he's down, he talks about it a lot. He's now shooting a series in Baltimore in real life. He's working.
It's okay, you can give him a shout out. There's lots of agents watching.
Daryl Britt Gibson, and he got to start The Wire, so they got the Wire crew together again. So so he's working, which of course I'm happy about that. And I think, as Casey said, that we're seeing more people working, and we're seeing fans in real life at stadiums, and I think that's making people feel good.
So you guys sound more optimistic than I would have thought, partly from the fact that you, Casey, launched a live entertainment and music part of your business. Obviously, Paradigm was in dire straits, and that was an opportunity. But what made you decide to move into that space?
To be fair, the pandemic didn't make us decide we want to be in the music business. It's something we had tried to do for a long time, and obviously that requires the right opportunity at the right time. Paradigm had built a great music business with incredible agents and incredible artists that they represent, and the timing worked out for us to be able to acquire that business. And that was a decision because we believe what matters in the world is what's live, and what matters live is sports and music. And so we have a company that is fully developed around those kind of areas and that thesis. And the pandemic was just an opportunity, right? I didn't buy this music business to be in it for a year. My approach is I'm going to be in this business forever, and I believe that live music is going to be more and more important forever. And so to be able to be in that business in a thoughtful way with great people, we'll do that every day of the week. And obviously we have a company that's more than capable of, if the pandemic lasted 5 years, we're fine. And so we were able to make that commitment and invest in that opportunity, and to support the employees who are now Wasserman Music employees, and to serve the artists we represent, because we believe in the long-term value of that business. And that's not about what day is the pandemic ending. That believes in just a very strong belief in the power of live music.
So you have a whole lot of highly paid agents in your employ who can't do a whole lot of work?
Well, I would say, rough numbers, it's probably between 30 and 50% of normal. So it's not zero. Last year was probably zero. We didn't own the business last year, but rough, maybe not fully zero, because there was a little bit in the beginning of 2020. This year, maybe 30 to 50%, depending on timing, because obviously timing of a calendar year is very different than tours and stuff. And our anticipation is over the next couple of years, you're frankly bigger than it was pre-pandemic. And so, again, when you are building a company that's about stability over a long period of time, those things aren't as important as being in business with the right people and doing great work for the clients we represent.
So how do you feel about the agency business overall? WME successfully IPO'd. There's still a lot of talk around Endeavor and how it's doing.
Look, I mean, different people have to make different capital decisions for what's right for their business. We have a very strong, stable business with an incredibly strong balance sheet, and shareholders, including myself, who are in this forever. And so whether or not going public is right for us today, probably not, because of the way we are structured and built. That doesn't mean it may not be right at a later date. As long as we can do the work we need to do for the clients we serve and compete, I think we'll look a lot like we do today from a capital structure. But again, that can change. I mean, I'm and I give Endeavor credit. They thought that they needed to diversify their business, so they bought things like the UFC, and that created a capital structure that probably required them to go public, in not in a bad way, in a good way. Right. And so if we did something like that, maybe we'd do that too. But given what we do today and our trajectory in the near term, we're very comfortable doing what we do the way we do it.
Well, I think they diversified out of representation and into events as well. That does not interest you?
It's not whether it interests me or not. It's whether, again, there's lots of good ideas. That doesn't mean it's the right time to do them or the right way to do them. And so for us, and we weren't looking at that opportunity, so I'm not judging that one, but I'm just saying in general. But look, the ownership of intellectual property is obviously a great value creator. But we love the service industry we are in, which is representing talent and brands. We have built I think a really diversified, interesting business. I think it allows us to see a lot of other opportunities, and in that opportunity set, I'm sure there will be, things for us to acquire that look a lot more like intellectual property than looks like a service business.
Kevin, so the owner of the LA Times, Patrick Soon-Shiong, came to TheGrill in 2018. He shared his vision for the paper. It was very inspirational. I was very encouraged by what he had to say. But since that time, the Times has continued to have some struggles. And I would say that for many, you are the great hope of the newspaper. What is the biggest challenge you are facing at the LA Times right now?
Well, there are a lot of challenges, right? I mean, as you say, in the newspaper business, but I think we have to redefine it, what that means. And for me, the challenge first is just getting, the motivation, getting people excited. I think culture and who you work with every day is important. You want people to feel great about their work. I want to get all of the ideas of all of the talent to make use of 100% of the talent we have. And so part of it is just building excitement and trying new things. So the challenge is really, how do you go after a new audience, an audience that has grown up digitally, because that's the future right now of all of us, and people who don't have the habit that I grew up with, and I'm sure Casey did, of a beautifully curated, and I know you did, Sharon, a beautifully curated paper that human beings do every single day that drops on your doorstep, and it's a fantastic, it's a marvel. But now there's so many ways to reach people, and you can reach them through music. You can throw your journalism and create digital shows with stars. You can have podcasts. We're experimenting a lot with audio. When I was at the Undefeated, we did music videos. We did 2 best-selling children's books. There are lots of ways to reach audience, and I think having this ecosystem, tapping into the ecosystem of content creation and building your journalism around it and keeping the foundational strength of your journalism, which we have some of the greatest journalists in the world, but expanding that how to do that and bring that together is a big challenge. But if we do that, then I think we'll be successful.
Casey, you grew up, no doubt, reading the LA Times. You may have a deeper well of knowledge of the paper than actually Kevin does. What advice as a reader or as a customer do you have for him?
I think what made the LA Times great was it was an integrated part of this community. And when the ownership shifted away from the Chandlers, it lost that. And I would say that LA is a town that, as you will learn, and that is unique in that the size of the city to essentially have one newspaper. It has to be part of the fabric of the community. And I'm not saying that should alter how it covers the community, but it has to be a part of the community. And I think that's something that was lost, and it's what made the paper special and what made people care, I think, in a lot of ways. And I'm not talking just in the obvious ways, but the philanthropic efforts of the Chandlers. There was so much that happened in this community because and from the LA Times existence. And I think the papers have lost a little bit of that local connection given the ownership, as you mentioned before, over the last 20 years. And so hopefully with Patrick, who's obviously local, and Kevin, that can be a part of its sort of rebirth.
Yeah, look, I agree with that 100%. I've always been thought of newspapers have to be both certainly journalism, with a lens on everything, but they have to be part of the civic fabric of a place. You know, it's a civic institution as well. You know, it ought to be part of communities. It ought to help explain and reveal the place to the people who live it. It ought to be a place where you can bring people together who wouldn't otherwise get together. And I think the Soonshawns have a lot of ideas about that. We have a big campus, doing events, going to other places and doing events, supporting other people's projects. It's certainly something that I want to do. I think it's part of journalism, really, you know, to go to the places and explain yourself, to show up once we get into a safer environment, but to do more things in communities. And so it's going to make our journalism stronger, and it's going to make people see us who may not have given us a look before.
Are there any examples of any events that you have in mind?
You know, sometimes there are people in different quadrants of the community. You could house, you bring a collection of photographs from the LA Times and bring people to see them who wouldn't ordinarily do curated, you know, dinners and events. I've talked about block parties. Go to a place, go to a place and host something. You know, show up. Events with journalists that you don't see. There's a lot of disconnect between journalists and some people who don't have a relationship with journalism. They haven't been interviewed. They haven't grown up with you. So you have to sometimes break that down. And sometimes the best way to do is to be visible. So I think there are a lot of things you can do. We could sponsor a mural series. One of the things I said, murals, a lot of great artists here. Support a lot of artists. Go around the in different neighborhoods and create murals in places that may not have gotten that traction. Tag at LA Times. You know, we want to be associated with you. So I just think there are a lot of things to do. You be creative to make that connection rich.
That's cool. Casey, you had some thoughts about how important sports journalism is to you. What are your thoughts about the LA Times' very distinctive voice in covering sports?
I mean, I grew up in LA. I grew up every day reading. My grandmother said, I don't care what section, so surprise, I picked the sports section, but I don't care what section you read, you have to read one section of the LA Times every day and tell me about it.
Really?
Yep. And okay, 99.9% of the times it was sports section, but you know, from Jim Murray and Alan Malamud and TJ Simers and Plaschke and just this incredible history of writers. I mean, I don't think there's you can correct me, I'm not sure that there's a sports section in the country that has more Pulitzers than the LA Times. So, and to date all of us, pre-internet, it was the only way you could see the final scores of West Coast games was to wake up in the morning and look at the LA Times, because the East Coast papers closed their editions before the West Coast games were over. Right. And so it had this sort of an inherent advantage for information. And so look, I think, you know, LA is an incredible sports town. We've got as many sports teams in Southern California as any place on earth. The business of sports is really significant. The next 10 years in LA are going to be sort of the most incredible sports run in maybe in any city's history. And, you know, it's one of the things that has distinguished the LA Times and hope continues to be. Obviously, its owner owns a piece of the Lakers and is passionate about sport. Obviously, the new editor has a deep sports background and history. So I just hope that it bodes well for, I care about the LA Times. I care about this community. I care about the LA Times, and I'm passionate about sports. So I'm a big cheerleader of Kevin and what he's going to do. Look,
sports is one of there are a lot of things that divide us. You know, from healthcare to politics, but sports is one thing.
The White Lotus divides us.
The White Lotus divides us. But sports is one thing that brings people together, because they cheer for teams in your community, and regardless of whether you Republican or Democrat, or you grew up rural or in the city. Rich or poor, people have that connection, and it's a great advantage. You know, it's something that pulls people together, and it's also just every kind of story you can tell through the lens of sports. You know, I know that from my time at ESPN and building the Undefeated, but it's also just it's a lot of great advantage, and we have a tremendous sports staff at the LA Times that we'll continue to build.
So let's stick with sports for a minute. Casey, you're chair of LA 28. In fact, I just realized that you are basically in charge of the Olympics in LA. What is that like for you?
It is. Well, I joked that, so Mayor Garcetti asked me in 2014 to lead the bid. And I only make two jokes about that. One, if the mayor of your city calls and asks you to do something for nothing, you probably should just hang up the phone, because I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. And secondly, I didn't know I was signing up for a 14-year volunteer job. But truthfully, kidding aside, I love the city. I was born and raised in the city. I'm raising my family in the city. And I think this is a city built, first of all, it's a city built on tourism. LA is built on people coming here to do things, whether that's Disneyland and Universal, or the Academy Awards and the Grammys and the Emmys, or it's the Super Bowl, or it's Laker games. I mean, this is what we do here. And so to have the biggest event on earth in one of the 10 great cities on earth at a time certain.
I'm sorry, it's the biggest event on earth? Fact check.
The Olympics is the biggest event on earth by any measure. We will sell plus or minus 12 million tickets in 30 days. That's 4 seasons of Dodger baseball in 30 days. 10,500 athletes in one city. So World Cup's big event. In America, it'll be in 10 cities.
Kevin, you're going to need some more reporters.
We'll have it covered.
There'll be, for opening ceremonies, there'll be plus or minus 150 heads of state, including the President of the United States. You'll have 70,000 fans at SoFi. You'll have the Olympic torch coming through LA, all before you've had a competition.
So, Casey, apart from your passion for the city, what do you actually know about organizing the largest event in the world?
I know how to build great teams and hire great talent. And so I think we're putting together a world-class team to deliver, to use a pun, a games-changing games. We are going to change people's perspective on how, what, and the results of hosting Olympic Games. We are a private enterprise, so we are not a city agency. We don't get any money from the city. We don't get any money from the state. We don't get any money to subsidize what we're doing. We are making the largest investment in LA pre-delivering the games.
Can I pause here for a second? The New York Times did a major takeout on this question, suggesting that perhaps the Olympics should just go away, that the Olympic International Committee is corrupt beyond saving.
Look, here's the thing. It's funny. I know it's easy to say that. By the way, just for the record, the last organizing committee that got indicted for cheating was the Salt Lake Olympic Committee, not the International Olympic Committee. The U.S. bid for the Winter Games.
Is that supposed to make me feel better?
No, but that's not the IOC. The IOC is this organization of 100 people who just vote on games. That's literally all they do, for the most part. So the corrupt thing is ridiculous because I've lived it and I've seen it. There is no, when it comes to bidding, and in my experience, no corruption. People get upset because they think all these cities spend this money because the IOC tells them. Well, I can tell you, amongst all the people, probably including maybe the person who even wrote that article, I've actually read the host city contract. And it says very simply, your responsibility is to deliver the games on a date certain. It doesn't say you have to build a new stadium. It doesn't say you have to build housing. It doesn't say any of those things. Where the Olympics went wrong, and by the way, in part because of the financial success of 1984, is that cities bid on the Olympic Games to drive an urban agenda. The Olympics started out as a social justice exercise. The original creation of the Olympics was to have a common set of rules, to have everybody literally put down their swords and compete together in peace. So the Olympics in '84, we were building 0 new venues. 0. Where's your Olympic Village? It's the dorms at UCLA. Where's your Olympic Stadium? Well, we've got 2, SoFi and the Coliseum. Where's your arena? Well, we've got Staples Center and now the new Bomber Intuit Dome in Inglewood. We've got the Rose Bowl. We've got Dodger Stadium. We've got USC and UCLA's facilities. We've got the beach in Santa Monica. We've got Home Depot Center. We've got the beachfront in Long Beach. We could host the Olympic Games tomorrow. We're not building a venue. So when people say they want to get rid of the Olympic Games, it's because I believe they don't understand what it means to host the Olympic Games. The government of Japan and the prefecture of Tokyo chose to build all that stuff because of the Olympic Games. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. And in LA, we're choosing to do something very different.
Well, I'm not an expert on this topic, so I think you just out-argued me, but I do think it's going to be a very interesting enterprise.
We hope so.
One of the things we talk about every year at TheGrill is diversity and inclusion and how the industry is doing in that regard. Kevin, there's almost, as you know, no doubt, there are almost no people of color running major newspapers. Certainly, it's not 50-50 when it comes to women, and this industry, entertainment, is still struggling in the wake of the Me Too movement to make real gains. So first, Kevin, let me ask you, how are you addressing this?
Yeah, I'm thinking we're just going to do it. You know, I mean, I've been involved in this all my career. It's how I got into it. So I'm not late to this, right? You know, I'm not here after the reckoning in America and studying it now and trying to do stuff. This has literally been part of my focus at every place I've been in my entire career. So from a value standpoint, I think you have to elevate, in a lot of other places though, you have to elevate it as a value. And I think part of, you have a lot of well-meaning people in media, but the change doesn't happen because it's not a big enough value. It doesn't climb to the top of the value tree. And so here it's core. I'm an executive editor. It's high on my value list. It's at the top. And so we have to have and this goes into the leadership ranks. We got to do better. Certainly with Latino journalists, I'll just call that out at the LA Times, which we will in leadership ranks. But we're going to keep making progress and hires, and I'm looking at other people to do that in other parts of the industry, because a lot of companies, media, sports, otherwise, and they have a lot of people that are, you know, in front of cameras and writing stories and doing things, but not people running the things. And so it's striking how stark that is when you really look at it. There have been some great change that's happened lately in heads of ABC News, black women, MSNBC, ABC. There've been some newspaper hires, right, in Texas. Several, you know, people of color have taken the helm of newspapers in Texas. So,
including one of your guys?
Yes, and also, yeah, Sewell Chan just started in the nonprofit Texas Tribune, you know, which is good. So there's just there is some change happening, but it needs to be accelerated.
Do you have any kind of specific metrics in the newsroom that you're looking to commit to?
There are some that before I got here, you know, there were some goals that the Soon Shons, you know, laid out and agreed to, and there was a lot of discussion that predated me, but I don't have those numbers and percentages right off the top of my head, but we'll meet every target. You know, it won't be hard to meet. We'll go after every target that we committed to, and it's something on my mind, like all the time.
Casey?
It's it's interesting that Kevin described it the way he did, because look, we're in the service business, so we represent clients, and I look at diversity as a competitive advantage, because if your job is to give clients the best advice, if it's a bunch of 47-year-old white Jewish people who work at my company, I don't need all those people, because they're all going to sync and say the same thing I am. The way you get diversity of thought is diversity of perspective, and that requires you to have a diverse workforce. That to me is actually, to your point, it is actually an economic advantage to be diverse. It's not about numbers and systems and checking a box. This is about...
Respectfully, we've been saying that for a lot of years, not Wasserman specifically, but Hollywood has been.
Well, look, no. Here's what I'm certain. I'm incredibly proud of what we have done, and I'm certain we can do better. And I'm certain everybody should be saying the same thing. Now, having said that, the challenge, so if you believe in a culture, and you believe in maintaining a culture of a company, the way to build diversity is at the bottom of the funnel, not at the top. Because the way to have the next person in my seat is that 15 years ago, the entire intern class was women, Latinos, or African Americans. 15 years ago. Not hiring a general counsel who checks a box today, because everyone's going to try and hire that person. Kevin's in his position because he had an opportunity. If 500 more Kevins had that same opportunity, he wouldn't be one of a small handful. There'd be a lot. So when I look at our company, we have been incredibly diverse. 35% of my employees started as interns. I have 1,500 employees. everyone in my intern classes is, you'd be hard pressed to find a white male in an intern class in the last 10 years at Wasserman. Very intentionally, because that's how you build culture, that's how you create success, and that's how you create a bigger pool of opportunity for a diverse set of people.
Can you talk about the numbers?
Look, I don't know. I don't speak for other agencies. And
I mean, we have actually surveyed the agency, and they all had committed publicly to certain numbers of diversity and gender equity. When we asked them, they wouldn't even talk about it.
Right. And by the way, we buy a music business, and the first thing we recognized is, wow, almost the entire leadership team is white. Now, a ton of incredible female executives, high-level leadership in the business. And so when we bought the business, I said, first of all, the clients we serve don't look like the people who serve them. So we need to do a better job. And so we announced I funded personally, and we announced a partnership with Color Change to hold us to a higher standard in the music business. That's how we started that business, because we said, look, we're buying a business. We didn't create the business, but we need to do a better job. And that's about doing the hard work and investing over a long period of time. There's this great quote I love, that success comes from long obedience in the same direction.
That's very nice. So the next time we do this survey, would you take part in that survey?
If the numbers were anonymous, we would.
Numbers are...
In other words, if you don't tell everyone else our numbers, because we don't like to, we have a different way of discussing it with our employees. We're very transparent, but that's not something we share with the world. But we share it very clearly internally.
Yeah, no, we're the world.
I know we don't share it with the world. That's what I said.
It's hard to have that conversation unless we get that transparency.
No, but you can show agency A, B, C. You don't have to, again, I'm happy to do that.
Before we have to wrap up, overall, I'd love your opinion on whether you are optimistic or pessimistic about where entertainment and media in LA is going in the next, say, 3 to 5 years.
Optimistic, because, I'm not a pessimistic person. So it's a core industry. I mean, we export entertainment globally. It's central to it, and there are a lot of smart people in this business. So I'm going to be optimistic, because people need entertainment, and all of the obstacles will be figured out.
Despite consolidation and jobs lost.
This is what I look at it. At the end of the day, I'm a storyteller, right? And I look at it, all the new storytelling. It's become democratized. Some of the greatest, most interesting things that are happening are on social platforms like YouTube and TikTok. There's an incredible number of people on Instagram creating things, telling stories, small films, great social content creators. So the world of entertainment is widening, and it's not just a matter of, can you do something for linear television or create a big film, and everybody who is in the content creation business, they got competition. There's nothing but somebody waiting to step in and do something. The one thing, and this gets back to diversity too, is opportunity. Give more opportunity to people who don't have it. I mean, we act like 6 people can make a film, or produce one, or act in one. And in fact, they're like millions. The talent is everywhere. So, I look at it in my business, I challenge people to do something ahead of your time. Let's discover people before they become somebody that you're writing about. So that's, and they're out there.
Casey?
Look, I think Kevin and I are both going to not answer the question you asked, which I think the question you were asking is the traditional entertainment business, the traditional studios, make a film in a soundstage. And I think Kevin's perspective, and I would even expand it further, is let's just talk about things that are delivered to the world. That's sports, that's music, that's YouTube videos, that's TikTok videos, that's Instagram. And I believe that LA is the best place on earth to come and tell your story. Whatever that story is, in whatever format you want to tell it, that this is a community built on creative energy and creative success. And that's why the world events come here. There's a reason I believe the Academy Awards are here. There's a reason I believe the Grammys wants to be here. There's a reason the Super Bowl is coming here. There's a reason that our sports teams are as successful as any in the world. There's a reason that, so many of those creators are from here and live here. There's a reason that the Olympics is coming here. This is the place where the world comes to tell their story. And I think that's in our fabric as a community. So
I co-sign. I co-sign.
And I think who those creators are, to Kevin's point, you look at jobs lost. Well, how many people are making a living on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube that wasn't even a job before? I don't know. I don't even know how to capture that information. But the opportunity is enormous, and I don't believe that there's a better place to do that than Los Angeles.
I'd like to believe that's true, and I'm going to co-sign it with you. Thank you so much, Casey and Kevin, for joining me for this fascinating conversation.